Frequent fully threaded listeners know that we've been talking a lot on the podcast about the trend in the industry towards consolidation. In other words, a lot of companies being bought up, and it seems like every time you look at the fastener media these days, there's another one. And one of the culprits behind this trend seems to be AFC Industries. Well, on the line with us now is a gentleman who knows a little bit about that. He's Kevin Godin with AFC. Actually, he's the CEO. Thanks for hopping on with us today, Kevin.
Hi, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
You know, you and I have had a lot of opportunities to cross paths over the years, but it wasn't until recently that we actually had a in-depth conversation. I mean, we've been at so many of the same events and so forth. So glad to finally get a chance to get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting how that works. Such a small world, small industry, and yet there's people you see, but you don't really get to know them, and that's sort of the case with us. Well, you are so popular. You always have a line of people over there, so I just figured you're busy.
Well, not too busy for you, Kevin, and thanks for saying that. That's one of the reasons that I frequently leave the booth to Brian, you know. He does a great job along with Lynn so many times for us. Well, you're a guy in demand as well these days because you're doing a lot with AFC. You're also the president of the NFDA, and we'll talk about that a little bit today. Matter of fact, I was looking at the NFDA website, prepping up for our conversation here today, and right there, when you fire up the homepage, there's a photo. Oh, man, if we could only go back to that, Kevin, the 2019 meeting down in Naples, that was an event.
The good old days, 2019. Back before the world changed, right?
That's right. That was the last really great shindig we had before they threw the plague at us. And man, do we look happy there and content.
Yeah, one of the things we're really excited about, and I guess we'll talk about this when we get talking about NFDA, but the opportunity to really reconnect with folks this coming year with in-person events is something that we've talked a lot about. And we've made a lot of efforts to adjust and evolve and be able to offer things virtually, remotely, provide value to the folks who for various reasons, whether it's COVID or whatever, can't get out. But really excited about getting out to actually see people face to face and reconnect and get caught up.
Yeah, it's going to be good. And it seems like that's picking up steam. Let's hope it continues in that direction. Well, let's talk a little bit about what's been going on with AFC. I mean, I believe the most recent company that you acquired was Oregon Bolt, and there were a cluster of them ahead of that. Talk a little bit about that, Kevin. What is the recent track record looking like? What's it been like doing all this work? I mean, it's been a real whirlwind.
Yeah, so we have been looking to partner with companies through acquisition for several years now, and as you probably know, we've done several over the years, but this last year was pretty busy for us. Mid-year, we closed on a company called Klein Tool. Then we did All American Fasteners, a company out of New Jersey with locations in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and New Jersey. Then we did ASKU, which a lot of folks know, especially out on the West Coast there. And that was followed up with Oregon Bolt, as you mentioned. And I think we ended up closing the last three in 40-something days. So there was quite a rush there. But we're excited about all of these companies. Great teams, really good emphasis on customer service and understanding the business isn't, it's not a catalog business, but that we're providing service. And that's one of the main things we look for. And all of those businesses bring us talent, geography, expansion in end markets. So we're really excited about all of those.
Well, you've got a great team working with you over there. And I know a couple of those guys. You want to speak about them and the roles they're playing in this strategy as you're unrolling it?
Yeah, the thing I'm most proud of at AFC is the team that we have. There are a lot of folks who invest in businesses, and they've got really smart accounting people and really smart banking people. But one of the things that we've really tried to emphasize here is we want the folks operating the business to be people who understand the business. And so our team, I think, is one of the best balanced in terms of experience in the industry and exposure to those other sort of financial levers that you need to be able to take advantage of. And so, we have, I don't know how many years, I never, I guess, added it up, but, our president is a guy who was a VP of business development at Optimus. His name's Kevin McCarthy. Our VP of sales, Pete Glynn's been around. A lot of people know Pete. He worked at Würth. He had his own business for a while. He's at Timberline. John Kovac, our VP of sales, he was he's been around the block too. So I mean, I could go on and on. There's a lot of depth there and a lot of talent on that executive team. And when we acquire a business, especially businesses in geographies where we don't have as much concentration, we're really looking for a local management team that we can support and partner with, provide more resources to them, and provide that experience in that team. Have somebody that can be a sounding board for them or come in and help execute on opportunities. And we've found it to be a model that works really well. Some people buy a business, they come in, they say, "Hey, we're not going to change anything." Well, I mean, it doesn't make sense to not change anything. The world continues to evolve. We want to make improvements and continue to improve where possible.
Right.
But you also don't want to come in and change everything. You bought the business presumably because you like what they're doing, or they're doing something well. So we're trying to we try to balance that. So in terms of service and our local divisional folks are highly empowered to run their business and take care of the customer. But in terms of strategy and some of the back end things that can bring efficiencies, that's where we think we really can help. So it's been a good model. Most of the folks that we sell to stay with us. And, sometimes people are looking to retire or transition. That's why they sell. So that's different. But the folks who've wanted to be part of the team and continue, they all have. And we've been pretty successful together so far.
Interesting. Well, you answered several of my questions generally with that statement, and that's all really, really interesting. I know a lot of guys in the audience either own or run companies that could be future acquisition candidates for companies like AFC. There are several that are doing similar things. Do you sense a competition out there, Kevin, when you're searching for companies to add into your group that others are suitors for these companies? I mean, is that kind of a feeling emerging out there?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of capital that's being pent up that's looking for a place to be put to work. There's a lot of investors that like the space, right? I think part of what makes us unique is that we have a lot of deep experience operating a fastener business, and we have the capital backing. So there are others who have that dynamic as well, and we do run into them from time to time. But it's interesting. I guess it's a lot like selling a customer, right? If it's really just an auction, that's probably not a good deal, right? You want to have a good fit culturally. You want to have a good fit in terms of what that seller's looking to do and what you're looking to do and what that team is built to do and how it fits with what you're trying to accomplish. So if you're buying businesses, let's just say, off a spreadsheet, that's probably not going to work. So what happens then is there'll be several people who might have reached out to the folks who've sold to us, and they get to know some of those people. And over time, I mean, value has to be there, but over time, you really begin to see who you think might be the best fit to accomplish whatever you're trying to do in selling the business, whether that's to transition out, whether that's to just have access to more resources or more geography. The reasons vary. So the first phase is more competitive. There's a lot of people involved, but as the process plays out, people tend to gravitate towards a partner that they feel is going to best meet their needs and culture.
Right. Well, if they're wise, they do. But within that group of companies, as you're describing, that seem to be good fits, I mean, there are some that seem to be right in the sweet spot. I mean, let's face it, Solution Industries recently is a great example of Vertex. There were several companies that would have liked to have partnered with that company. There are a lot of mid-sized and smaller companies that may fit that same category. So I guess what I was leading up to really, Kevin, is it a seller's market if you're a company that feels like you're in that sweet spot category?
Yeah, well, there's no question that it's a good time right now to be a seller, because when you think about what happened with COVID, um, a lot of capital got delayed in terms of its deployment. So the financial investors, anyway, many of them are behind their deployment schedule. So I don't know that I want to take up too much time, but a lot of people don't really understand maybe or haven't been exposed to how that private equity market works. But if you commit to investing in a fund, you're basically signing a contract to provide them capital, right? When they call for it, you're not giving them the money, but you've got to keep it liquid, because if they call for it, you have a short amount of time to provide it. So what happens in those cases is if you get a lot of capital committed that's not called, that's not being put to work, those people who committed that, they're saying, "Hey, wait a minute, this money, this money isn't working for me. When are you going to use it?" And so they want that money to be put to work, because it doesn't do them any good in a CD or whatever. So when COVID happened, things slowed down. A lot of businesses were impacted. That meant that there was a lot of undeployed capital building up. And so I think that's why you see for high quality businesses right now, the valuations have gone up, and it is more competitive for those companies, like you mentioned, that are attractive to multiple buyers. It's certainly a good time to be a seller right now. And now, whether or not that means you should sell now depends obviously on a lot of other factors and what you think the market might do and what you're personally trying to accomplish. But yes, right now it's certainly much more of a seller advantageous market than was prior to COVID.
Okay, so I'm going to interpret that as we shouldn't be surprised if we see more acquisition activity out there in the market. Is that a safe assumption?
I think that's a safe assumption, yeah.
Okay, for the foreseeable future. Got that, people? Let's talk a little bit about the supply chain. That's something that you know a whole lot about. As a matter of fact, that is one of the reasons AFC has a role in the industry, right? It's right at the top of your moniker. What do you see these days? I mean, obviously, it's all around us. Give us your summary.
Yeah, well, obviously, everybody in the business, I think, is seeing the same things, facing the same challenges, right? There's capacity issues. Some of that's logistical. Some of that has to do with availability of materials and capacity in Asia and here. As people are expediting, business is strong, moving things here, then that capacity fills up. I think what we're seeing right now is sort of like a snake eating a rabbit. Right, you've got a lot of people who are trying to catch up really fast and putting a strain on the system. A lot of capacity was adjusted out, labor, all of those kinds of things, come together. I think, like most things, it'll adjust. So I don't think that what we're seeing now will be sustainable for years, but I also don't think it will go back to what it was. Probably for the next several months, for sure, from what we're hearing. We're going to continue to see some challenges, and and folks will add capacity where they think that they can get a return on that, and it'll begin to adjust. But I think some of the other dynamics, labor and some of the other things, are going to be longer term factors that have to be accounted for.
Well, there's a lot of talk about all of this chaos in the supply chain, adding to the movement of reshoring. In other words, bringing manufacturing back to the U.S. Is AFC feeling that and perhaps even planning to do some of that yourselves?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think when we hear about those trends, people tend to collapse that as if it's a macro trend. I think it tends to be more granular. So there are certain types of parts that should always be made here, should have always been made here. And AFC is certainly committed to being a great partner with people that are experts in those things. We want to have strong domestic supplier relationships. And so Where we're investing in our own ability to produce product is so on the tooling side, we manufacture a lot of the tooling we sell, and prototyping things like because we have a custom engineered components group. And so those kinds of things tend to be lower volume or specialized, where we'll manufacture prototypes. We'll get it kind of dialed in what we want. But no, then we're going to look for a domestic partner where it makes sense to manufacture those things at production volume. And likewise, there are some parts that it just makes sense even still to import. So we want to have healthy relationships on both sides. We want to have a strong U.S. Manufacturing base that allows us to be responsive and take care of our customers. And we also want to have relationships offshore to be able to do the same thing. So we're not looking to try to develop expertise in-house to manufacture products. We would rather partner with people that have decades of experience with those kind of parts and develop a good relationship with them to support us.
Well, we kind of backed into it, but let me give you a chance to thumbnail AFC Industries. In other words, give our listeners a sense of the size and scope of your operation.
Yeah, so AFC Industries is sort of interesting, right? It started, or the AFC originally derived from Advanced Fastener Corp in Cincinnati, Ohio, which was founded in the late 80s. And then the original platform acquired Dell Fastener in Pittsburgh. And that was the original business, those two, when I came back in 2015, I suppose it was. Yeah, it was 2015 when I came to the business. And then we've continued to grow organically and through acquisition. Today we've got 42 branch locations and about $260 million in revenue. So, the business has grown really well, both through acquisition and organically. And so really, when we think about the business, though, we're not looking to compete with Amazon. We're not looking to compete with catalog guys. We really think of it in terms of really providing a service. We're selling a service. The parts that we have to develop expertise around are a vehicle for delivering that service. So we think of ourselves as a supply chain solutions company, which is why we have tooling, custom engineered components. We'll do like machine castings and tight tolerance machine parts, as well as your traditional fastener product offerings, because it's the same problem you're trying to solve in terms of making a manufacturer or assembler more efficient at running their operation. So again, when we talked about suppliers and having a healthy manufacturing base in the U.S., we also see ourselves as part of allowing customers to be efficient and have a strong manufacturing base here. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Well, I think that gives us a pretty good picture, a pretty good overview. And again, I backdoored us into that, but such are my interview skills. The conversation is flowing along here. And so I'm going to zigzag once again and return back to this topic of supply chain, because you're in the mix of it. You clearly understand your role in it. And we've been talking a lot on the podcast about blockchain and why it may or may not be applicable to the fastener industry. And clearly, based on the recent FDI report, it's not really on the radar of our audience. And Kelly Cole spoke on this a little bit during his analysis in the previous segment. I don't think you had a chance to hear that, Kevin, but I bet you have some thoughts generally about blockchain and whether it may or may not impact us. What do you think?
Yeah, certainly blockchain is definitely the way that larger companies are moving in terms of, supply chain, data, and control. And it is something that I think those larger customers, particularly like automotive customers, medical customers, they're going to put pressure on suppliers to move that way. And I think some of the larger businesses in our space probably are aware of it, are already having those conversations and thinking about how that can be deployed. Now, I think the reality is that for the average fastener business, and when you look at that supply chain, the kind of technology that we tend to operate with, and the kind of technology that most fastener distributors and their suppliers operate with, we're a ways away, I think, from that being something that's on everybody's mind. But I do think it's something people should begin to come up to speed on and understand what's happening, because this is already something that is being embedded in people's strategic initiatives at the larger customers. And you know how that goes. That will filter down over time. So are we talking about a year? No. I mean, but in 10 years, maybe that's where we'll be. We'll have to see how it goes.
Right. And actually, when we devised the questions on the recent FDI survey, the one that I really thought was going to be the clincher would be whether distributors were aware of anyone downstream or upstream from them that were forcing it on them. Because I never expected the fastener industry to be the driver of it. And again, we're really looking at the technology to satisfy that, what Chapman Riverchrome last episode calls supply chain transparency, right? So in theory, that is what the blockchain technology would bring, along with this immutability. And so it's the security and the transparency, in theory, is what the blockchain will someday deliver to these complex supply chain systems.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you think about how important the supply chain is right now on everybody's mind. If you can imagine, if you're running an automotive company or a medical device company, something like that, what we're dealing with is being amplified. And so, I think that comment about transparency, that is absolutely going to be a factor going forward. People are going to want control. People are going to want to be able to have visibility into what's happening all the way through the supply chain. And those things have always been concerns. Those have always been desires. But COVID and some of the other recent developments have even elevated that strategically at a lot of these larger businesses. And so I am aware of, a couple larger businesses in our space that I know. I've had conversations where they're looking to understand it better and how that could be something that they're able to provide. But again, I think the technology and the availability of implementing that in broadly throughout the supply chain for fasteners, we're probably a little ways away from that still.
Right. But the awareness is getting there, at least in certain circles. I'm sure you've heard that SmartCert is out there making some noise, and they're trying to bring the certification transparency that people want. And I guess at some level, SmartCert is an approach to that.
Yeah, I'm very generally aware of that, and I've heard about that and talked to some of our folks about what they're doing and what we're doing. But I'm not sure. I don't know enough about it to know whether or not that's using blockchain technology, but certainly an approach that's trying to provide that transparency and that clarity to the customer.
Right. Yeah, glad you said that, Kevin. They're not a blockchain technology, but they are trying to provide a tool for providing documentation transparency. Well, I mentioned Kelly Cole there a moment ago. He was our FDI analyst this month, and I know he's a compadre of yours, if no other way, through the NFDA. And you're the recent president. I suppose I've been remiss because it used to be our tradition to always invite the NFDA president on. And so we're backdooring that as well. Congratulations on that. And what can you say about the NFDA? What's happening over there? What are your plans for the organization in your rebuilding period after the plague?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. It's an interesting time to be involved with NFDA. Obviously, what people need and expect from an association, and how content is being delivered and to who content is being delivered continues to evolve. And the last couple of years have accelerated that. And we're excited about kind of where we're at here. And the reason is. This pandemic probably pulled us a little bit faster to begin thinking about providing content virtually, more so than what was on our mind before. And this year, we're really excited. I mentioned about restarting in-person events, but we're not going to just go back to what we were doing, right? We're looking to continue to support those roundtables, which I would encourage people to take advantage of those, as there's some great conversations that occur there. And looking at technology in other ways. How do we deliver the kind of content? How do we deliver the kind of experiences that are really going to help members? And then also expanding our view of who that content should go to. One of the things that I'm really excited about and looking forward to really digging in and work on more is to work with YFP. The young folks in the industry. It's an industry that is not necessarily easy to walk into and be effective quickly, because there's so much to learn, product knowledge, and just the whole the whole mountain of information and complexity in the supply chain and all of those things that has to be mastered. And then you're fighting uphill with the fact that not a lot of younger folks in high school or early college years are exposed to what the industry really does, and how critical it is, and how exciting it really can be. And the fact that you can really have a good career and take great care of your family and get to work with some wonderful people, that doesn't necessarily penetrate the culture, the broader culture, the way that perhaps it should. And so, we're really looking at both ends. How are we providing value to the members? How do we get content to them? We obviously have the traditional things, the executive summits, ESPS coming up in Minnesota here in a few months. So if you haven't signed up for that, we'd encourage you to do that. But also taking a little bit of a longer view to how do we help be a resource for these businesses to recruit, to train, to motivate and encourage the younger talent that they have, so that we can retain these folks and continue to be providers of excellent service through our businesses to our customers, and be successful together.
Yeah, I don't know if a lot of people are aware that the Young Fastener Professionals YFP was folded into NFDA somewhat recently. What exactly is the relationship there? I mean, is it a wholly owned subsidiary now, so to speak, or what's the relationship?
Yeah, no, I don't think we think of them as a subsidiary. There's a group of really, really bright, talented folks at YFP. They've got views on how they can make the industry a better place for people who are looking to grow. And really, what NFDA is doing is we're partnering with them in a couple ways. One, as a sounding board. Two, to sort of provide resources to them, and three, just to come alongside them and see where there's opportunities for us to help them to have access to the relationships and so forth that are going to support what their strategy is. And we're in dialogue all the time about what they're trying to do and how we can help them. So I don't want folks to think like NFDA is running YFP. That wouldn't be accurate. YFP has its own group of folks who are driving that, but we work with them on strategic alignment and resources and things like that to try to help them. And we're really excited about that partnership. I mean, that's the future of the industry, right? I mean, these are the folks who are going to be running all the companies one of these days soon. So we feel it's an important extension of what NFDA was already doing, which is to try to provide member companies access to things that are going to make them more competitive over the long run.
Right. Well, they need someone like the NFDA to whip them into shape. That I can tell you, because I've seen them at the trade shows, and they're usually like at least 15 minutes late in the morning to their booth. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's you got to balance the potential with the discipline sometimes, and like I don't know how it is with others, but sometimes when you get people, they've got a lot of great ideas and things, and really you just want to kind of talk to them about, okay, how do we filter these things to down to the most important things we can execute on, and where should that time be best spent, and and then hopefully hopefully they get there and show up on time, do what they need to do.
Hey, my advice would be to get new members in there and give them a good talking to by Bill Derry over there from Field Fastener. He'd whip them into shape real quick. I don't think they'd give him any lip.
Yeah, let Bill do the orientation for the new folks. That'd be it's like boot camp for fastener industry, right?
Yeah. So, well, that's all real good. Now, speaking of upcoming events, you just had your roundtable. The ESPS sessions are coming up. That is a fantastic event every time, even when it's virtual, I have to say, Kevin. I mean, I think out of all the things you could do virtually, that one really lends itself. But the big one coming up, maybe we can attract some new members for you. Naples, Florida in November. That's going to be a great meeting, not to be missed.
Yeah, those meetings, we always get really great feedback about those meetings, just the interaction and the networking that takes place. And hey, I am sitting here in Southeast Michigan looking outside at foot of snow. So the idea of being in Naples and being able to work on things that help the business and have some fun while we're doing it is very, very appealing to me, and hopefully some others. So yeah, if you haven't attended one of those summits before, I would definitely encourage you to look into it. It's a great venue, great networking opportunity, and a lot of fun.
We're speaking with Kevin Godin of AFC Industries. He's the CEO. He's also the president of the NFDA. Kevin, please, for our listeners who are not familiar, who you got on the board with you over there at NFDA this time around?
Yeah, we've got a great group of professionals on the board, and it's really a joy to work with people who are committed to the industry and challenging us to continue to do better. So we've got Nick Ritz from AIS, Kelly Charles from SEMS and Specials, Adam Derry from Field, Mike Robinson from Vertex, John Queenan from Specialty, Craig Penlin from Eurolink, Jim Degnan from SW Anderson, and Jody Tennies from Copper State, Mark Summers. So a great cross-section of folks from the industry that bring different perspectives and all sorts of different types of businesses from within the industry. And we really couldn't ask for a group of people who's more passionate about really providing great value to the members. So great team.
A lot of familiar names on that list. Well, that is a great lineup. You can learn more about NFDA, see the smiling faces of some of those people on the yacht that we were treated to by the Link team back in November 2019. It's at nfda-fastener.org. That particular pic flashes right up when you hit the website. And to learn more about AFC Industries, go to afcind.com. That's Kevin's baby. Thanks so much for speaking with us today, Kevin. I learned a lot, and I had a lot of fun getting to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, thanks. I feel the same and appreciate the opportunity.
I'm sure we'll do it again in some capacity, probably, hopefully, at an NFDA meeting or event sometime in the near future, an in-person one.
Yeah, that would be great.
Kevin Godin, CEO, AFC. Hey, thanks for listening in, everybody. We'll be back momentarily to wrap up this episode of Fully Threaded Radio.